Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's special Committee of the Whole meeting. The meeting is called to order. Let the record show that all the council members are present, save for Alderperson Ruby and Alderperson Bowring. We have a brief agenda this evening, but an important one. Item 2A is to consider draft ordinance amending Title 4, Businesses and License Regulations, Chapter 2, Liquor Control, Section 4-2-10, Restrictions on Issuance of the City of Geneva Code.
So moved.
Motion by Bruno,
Second.
seconded by Paschke. Ms. Dawkins, a brief introduction, then we can open it to the floor.
Sure. So at the City Council meeting on April 7th, 2025, under new business, the City Council directed staff to bring back the topic of restrictions on the issuance of liquor license to the mayor and City Council members for discussion by the Committee of the Whole. So before you this evening is an ordinance to do just that. That's it.
The floor is open for comments. Alderperson Bruno?
Thank you, and thank you for entertaining this question that I brought up last week. That I'm not running again. It seemed like an opportune time to broach this again, since I'm not won't be seated and I will not be seeking another office. But the issue comes down to conflict of interest is where I wanted to address this. I thought it was uncomfortable back when this was changed 8 years ago, thereabouts. You know, the city actively stings liquor license holders, which seems uncomfortable at best. While I certainly trust equitable treatment by our police, I'd rather not put them in that position. Council members also vote on new liquor licenses, which doesn't happen infrequently. That would require them recusing themselves, and I don't like to miss meetings. I don't like to recuse myself if I can avoid it. I think that hampers representation. I get the genesis. My understanding is the genesis of this, the change in Illinois state law to allow this was from a very small southern Illinois town that simply didn't have the candidate population to fill seats. We don't have that problem. We had a couple local races that had three candidates. I don't like to draw politics into it. Is a grave concern of mine that the national political dysfunction is creeping deeper into our local politics. At the time this was discussed, I believe it was Alderperson Kilberg that suggested we could wait for the implementation till a future election cycle, so there's no appearance of politicking going on, but the petitioners didn't have interest in that. But regardless, either way, I felt it was opportune, given my position, to bring it up again. I trust the process. If we change it back to disallow, I'm happy, and if the will of the council wants to leave it as is, I'm happy with that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the dais? Alderperson Kilberg?
I guess this must be a really pressing priority here in Geneva, that there's some type of an issue that's out there that needs to be addressed with an ordinance change. It seems to me, though, it's somewhat of an ordinance change looking for the solution to a non-existent problem. As you noticed in the questions that were addressed today to staff, over the last nearly decade, we've had two liquor license violations, one with 7-Eleven and one with Hammers. Both of them resulted in $1,000 fines, and their licenses were suspended for 24 hours. So that was in, I believe, 2017. So that's 8 years ago. And my experience here is that when a liquor license comes before us, a request for a liquor license, it's 99% of the time it's a unanimous vote in support of it. So it just seems that this seems to be somewhat of a fast track to me, and I just don't sense the urgency, especially when I requested a special meeting to discuss economic development in the community back in August, and we're still waiting for that to make the a meeting agenda. And it just seems that this, I don't see it as a big priority, and if there's some southern Illinois town that had an issue finding people to serve on their council, and that they had to tap into a tavern owner or somebody that runs a restaurant, you know, it seems to be an issue, obviously, for them, but for us, I think that as you look around our community, there are people that run, let's say if you own a pharmacy and you sell beer, let's take CVS. If, for instance, CVS was in violation, who would be the one that would appear before the liquor control?
It would be the manager of the CVS, whose name is on the liquor license.
Okay, it would be the manager, okay. But what about a restaurant, for instance, and let's say the owner or the proprietor wasn't present and all of a sudden somebody was served? Who would be served then?
The liquor license holder would be served, as would the individual who violated.
Would they both be fined?
The liquor license holder and the business would be fined or considered to be fined, depending on the situation. And secondarily, it is up to the liquor license holder to discipline that employee accordingly.
Okay. I know that the reason, and this was a topic that was discussed, I know when Alderman Brown and Honorable Alderman Hill was on the council at that time, and they felt that to make an issue out of the fact that they'd have to recuse themselves, I don't think would be all that big of an issue. Most of the time when we have a liquor license that comes before us, it's whoever's present. If it's 8 or 9 or 10, it's unanimous. And for one person to step back and say, I'm going to recuse myself because I hold a liquor license in the community, I think that would be the appropriate thing to do. And, you know, as we look at what's happening at the federal level right now, as you've referenced, I mean, to circumvent rules and laws, it seems to be a pretty common occurrence. But I don't see this as a problem that can't be dealt with and administered here locally. And again, I think if you're a derelict and you run for alderman and your constituents decide to elect you, then it's our responsibility as a council, or it's to counsel that individual that, hey, you got to recuse yourself if in fact a liquor license comes before us. I think, again, it seems like an ordinance that's chasing a non-existent problem to me. And since we've had so few, we haven't even had liquor control hearings, except those 2, I believe. Is that correct?
That is correct. And
Yeah.
oftentimes a liquor control hearing is not held because the purported violator, I forget the legal term, but offers a stipulation with regard to, and therefore the hearing is not held, and it's settled prior to the hearing taking place.
Out of hearing.
Correct.
Have we had those?
We've had multiple, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for what offenses are we talking about?
We're talking serving liquor beyond closing hours.
Okay.
We're talking serving liquor to minors. We're talking having folks in the restaurants and/or bars after hours. Oftentimes, not oftentimes, but on a quite a few occasions. Mr. Radovich would certainly know this, as would Stephanie Dawkins. We do have I want to choose my words carefully, a robust keeping an eye on everyone else in the community, and we receive phone calls from other license holders who say, hey, you might want to check Mr. Burns's place down there. And of course, we provide that compliance check through our.
Yeah,
police.
that's what I was wondering about is how the issue that we had here, I guess now it's several years ago, where we had a wedding reception that extended to one of our local establishments that went into the pre-dawn hours.
Yes.
And are you saying that was settled?
No, that was a full hearing in front of myself, city attorney.
That was pre-17 then,
No,
2017?
that was, yeah, that made also, you know, as you well recall, national headlines.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think everybody here now nods in concurrence as to what that was all about. Yeah. But that's up to the defendant. If the defendant wishes to say, you know what, guilty as charged, I'll write the check, or they can request, as is their right, a full hearing before the city attorney, myself, and others, where there's cross-examination, there's all that good stuff. It's a very formal process.
I'm finished for right now, but I might come back with a few more thoughts.
Okay. Anyone else? Alderperson Marks.
Thank you, Mayor Burns. You know, I'd rather be more inclusive and allow more people to run and let the voters make the choice than to be more restrictive. You know, I think when items come up in a campaign, you know, the voters can weigh it, and if they see it as an issue, they can vote for the other candidate. If they don't, I hate to make things more restrictive than we need to make them. And I just think, again, we're chasing a problem we don't have. I mean, most of our liquor licenses in the city are of people who are involved in the community, don't want to hurt the community, have the best interest of the community at heart. And those are the kind of people you want to have running. I mean, they got a stake in the game, too. And so, you know, I've gone back and forth on this, you could see from the previous votes, but, you know, we haven't had any problems with it, and I just say, leave it as is. That's just my viewpoint at this point, is we haven't had issues, and I just don't, I would rather be more inclusive. We always want to be more inclusive, and I think letting more people run for office is probably a lot better than having less people run. I mean, a good, clean, honest campaign brings out issues and thoughts that sometimes people who sit on the council haven't thought about. And I think that lets itself go by how many people run for office. I mean, some of them get messy, I know, and really personal. I don't like those kind of campaigns, but I say let it go and let the voters really make that decision. And I think we haven't seen an issue with it, so I don't see any reason in changing it. Thank you.
Alderperson Swanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that this is a solution seeking the problem, and we have had multiple aldermanic races that have been unopposed during my term, and even in the last cycle, we had 2 unopposed. So to restrict who can run for office doesn't make sense to me at all. Over time, Geneva has become less of a retail-oriented destination into a restaurant and destination, which is important to keeping the downtown vibrant. And to say that if you're an owner of one of those establishments, you can't be on the city council doesn't make sense to me. The city of Highland Park had a similar situation last year, and they had a non-binding advisory vote, a referendum, that was 82% of the residents said, we don't want to restrict liquor license holders, 82% of the residents. So I think that tells you that the public is in generally not saying this is a problem. I don't see that Geneva has a problem. I don't think that we should restrict who can run for office. And as I look at the restrictions on the issuance, I see other issues that don't make sense to me. For example, we don't allow a liquor license to be issued to someone who is not of good character. And to me, does that, who's deciding that? And how is that determined? Or does that make sense? That seems rather archaic. We don't allow a person who has been convicted of being the keeper of a house of ill fame. Again, that's kind of archaic. A person who has been convicted of pandering. When's the last time there's been a pandering issue in Geneva? I don't know. So all of these things could be cleaned up. So to go back and say we're going to clean up this one item when we have a kind of a silly ordinance to begin with, or a person is not a citizen of the United States. I didn't know being a citizen gives you the right to have a liquor license in Geneva. To me, that doesn't make sense either. So I am not in favor of establishing limitations on who can run for office. Thank you.
Just two clarifying points. The language in the statute is what we have to follow courtesy of Dillon's rule. Number two, this is not a restriction to run for office. As was explained in 2016 during robust debate in this very room, should a person who chooses to run for office also hold a liquor license and that individual is successful at the ballot box, then the council, I would assume, likely would say, the folks have spoken, let's amend the ordinance. That's kind of where it all began. At the time, that was not a path that certain people wanted to take, therefore they amended the ordinance, just for context purposes. So while we would love to, and I agree with you, we would love to change some of that language, we don't have the authority to do so. Alderperson Mayor?
I have a question, a clarifying question about something that Dean touched on, but has been touched on throughout
Sure.
these notes and certainly the videos that I watched. And that's that the aldermen would recuse themselves if an issue where a conflict may arise would come up. And Dean mentioned that the council could advise them to recuse themselves. I don't think that's the case, right? Like, the person has to choose to recuse themselves, not the council demands that they recuse themselves.
That's correct. Recusal is a self-governance tool, and even if there was a call for someone to recuse themselves, that individual could very well say, I choose not to. And we have
Right.
no authority as a council to say, please leave the room.
So, in regards to conflicts of interests and service on the council, I think that, after reviewing all the materials of all the meetings, which there were a lot of changed votes throughout. Some people voted in 2012 to keep it as was and then changed in 2016. And I really don't understand the whole, if somebody gets elected, then we'll change it thing. Like, I think that they'd have to give up their liquor license is what we're saying by this. Or transfer it or somehow find someone else to hold that liquor license for them. But I think Craig Maladra's point of view is what I tended to agree with the most in the review of all the documents here. And, well, I plan to just read what he said, so let me get to that page because
I can read it for you.
it's all right. Alderman Maladra reiterated his position to amending the code, citing a conflict of interest. Maladra noted that a license holder can depend on alcohol sales to drive their profits, and thus their livelihood would then be dependent on his or her fellow elected officials for that livelihood. Maladra also stated that the perception of changing an ordinance for one person, which we all know isn't the case here, was not in the best interest of the city. I watched the training videos on the requirements for liquor license holders, and I think that it's far from just stings for underage drinking that we need to conduct. There's a lot of compliance required in liquor license holding in this city. Whether or not we've had a lot of enforcement or enforcement actions in the past 6 or 8 years is immaterial to the fact that it could eventually become a problem or could be a problem right now that we're not aware of. it seems like bringing conflicts of interest into this council is a bad move for the council, and I therefore support restating the ordinance as it was before the 2016 repeal.
Floor is open. Anyone else on the dais? Before I reckon, Alderperson Paschke? Bruno?
I appreciate all of the comments that have been made, and I can understand where a lot of them are coming from. I think what I keep getting stuck on is that everything that I've read historically about the state's decision to change their statute about other cities, including the Highland Park referendum, is that it all seems to hinge around one individual that's well-liked in the community. And I personally don't think that's a great way to make policy, which is why I think this is a really good time to have this discussion and make a change. Because I do agree that based on what I've seen in terms of feedback and input from the people who ultimately are impacted by this, law enforcement, I know we don't have current feedback from our current law enforcement, but the comments and things that I've seen from the minutes and other reading is, law enforcement appreciates having that separation and not having that conflict, in having their bosses be the people that they're enforcing things on. And it is different from other professions in the city or other licenses that might be held. So I think this is a good time to have this conversation. While the air is clear just after an election, and I do support restating the regulation as it was.
Before I recognize Alderperson Bruno for a second time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak who has not yet done so? Alderperson Melicky.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple of comments as well as I was looking over the minutes and watching some of the videos from years ago. A lot of things we're talking about. I guess I want to preface that I'm currently comfortable with the language as it is, and I think that either way you can look at it from both sides, and I think there's great points on both sides. But to me, it's still all sort of hypotheticals. Something could happen, something could not happen. Conflicts of interest could happen. A big argument for the change I heard was, as Alderperson Marks has mentioned, was trying to expand the voter base. Since 2016, I don't think I've really seen a big expansion of people running for office with the change. So I don't think that's really come to fruition. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So I think I also have a question is, going back to hypotheticals, and I don't know if it's going to get answered or not, because it's sort of like it's a hypothetical question, but do we have the capability, say, we keep the language as is, and there are potential conflicts of interest down the road? Does the city have any sort of way to create some sort of anonymous whistleblower type of statute or something where law enforcement, if there is some sort of intimidation or they're not comfortable with dealing with office holders that also have a liquor license, that they could anonymously bring up the issue at hand? Does that make sense?
I'm not certain how to handle that, depending on how I interpret your question, but
I guess I'm saying is, say we have an elected official who's a liquor license holder and law enforcement has to do a stinging operation, and they go into the building and maybe they see some things, but they're not comfortable with saying something because personnel reasons or financial reasons or comfort with, pushback or retaliation. If we keep the language as is, do we then have the capabilities of
creating some sort of safe zone or something for the people that tasked with the responsibility to enforce the law to properly and honorably do so.
I'm happy to defer, but I would offer this
Too
comment.
much?
No, not at all. If a police officer, he or she somehow felt compelled to do nothing when noticing a violation taking place.
Sure.
They would be violating their own oath of office. That police officer then would be, I would assume, spoken to by the chief and/or his supervisors to ensure that such favoritism
Sure,
and/or nervousness is not shown while carrying out his or her duties. There have been examples of that in the past, not where there was intimidation, but where there was an awkward situation, yet the police officer, the firefighter, our building code compliance officer, and others have been in those situations, yet they carried out the policy as written. And yes, we've received phone calls about, this is hypothetical, your building commissioner, what the hell? And of course, whoever gets that call is oftentimes, not forced, but motivated to say, well, that's the rule. Much like, and I don't want to know, of us who have ever received a parking ticket or a speeding ticket, and they walk up to the car, and it's like, and I would assume everyone on this council would say, no, write the ticket.
sure.
Yeah, it's not an unusual situation, but also hazard a guess, no, not hazard a guess, I'm confident that our police officers not only are trained professionally, but also have that personal reality that I'm doing my job, damn it.
Sure, yeah,
If you're gonna intimidate me, whether through silence and some sort of, askance look or whatever the case might be, you're the one at fault, not me.
yeah, I agree. And I guess I would hope the other side would play the game the same way. If we had an elected official at a liquor license holder and
Exactly.
they were fined or found in violation of something, that they would properly step up to the plate and be like, this is our responsibility, and
Right,
so,
right.
okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Alderperson Bruno, all yours.
Thank you. I don't feel like it's being fast-tracked. I bring it up now specifically to keep it. I don't think this is being fast-tracked per se. I bring it up now simply because, A, I have nothing to gain or lose by this vote since I am not seeking reelection. Immediately after an election cycle is just the right time to bring it up, which is really my entire motivation there. To expanding the jury pool, there are 34 liquor licenses that have Geneva addresses. Out of the population of 20, whatever we have, 20-some thousand, 34 is not really moving the needle. To it not having been a problem, well, we haven't had a liquor license holder on the council, so we haven't had that. But again, I just wanted to follow up on those points. Happy either way it goes. I'm glad we're having a hearing. Thanks.
Alderperson Cosrog.
Question about, you mentioned Dillon's Law. Does Dillon's Law prescribe some of these more archaic things that Alderman Swanson brought up and say these need to be in your code?
It's the state statute.
Yeah,
It's the state statute. And the only thing different is the one issue they've changed.
correct.
That's no longer required.
So you can be more restrictive, not less restrictive, so all the others are in the statute. And so the language that's in the statute, the language that's in the ordinance now, providing for an older person to hold a liquor license is straight from the statute. To remove that language would be more restrictive, which is allowed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Kilberg for a second time.
Yeah. Since we're reading these, I'll read what was shared by the late Alderman Hill. and his comments were, Alderman Hill provided background on how the matter was brought up at the July 30th policy discussion at the request of a constituent, Mike Olison, who owns stock homes and who was interested in running for the First Ward Alderman in the April 2013 election. Hill believed that the city code should reflect what the state allows, which at that time was true, correct? And then former Alderman Brown stated that he too was approached by Mr. Olison and believed that the local ordinance should be updated to allow liquor license holders who also happen to be good representatives of the city to hold office, if that would be their desire. Brown also stated that he did not believe that the city's police department would be put in an uncomfortable position as far as enforcement, and stated that the aldermen are always able to recuse themselves if there was a conflict on an issue that was to be voted on. Brown would support an amendment, and that was, I believe, the amendment that I suggested, that the ordinance change would take effect initially after the upcoming election. And then as far as recuse, when I referenced that, I don't think it was going to be a topic of discussion in front of the entire dais. I think that would be where someone who has a relationship with that individual would approach them and say, this is something that you really need to recuse yourself on. I don't think it's appropriate that you would be voting on a liquor license. And I would hope that, you'd find the better angels in most people, that they'd say, yeah, I agree with that. That would be somewhat ridiculous for me to do that. What about a traffic violation? I don't think our police department, if I'm speeding, if I'm doing 45 on 38 through downtown Geneva and I was pulled over, I don't think the police should have a problem pulling me over and issuing me a ticket if I'm in violation. I think the same thing is true here. If you go to an establishment and they're serving an 18-year-old or someone underage, I don't think they should have any type of an issue, as the mayor pointed out, in following the law and in citing them. I think sometimes we make these things more complicated than they really need to be. And it just seems like we're making a change here for really no good reason. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Alderperson Cosarog.
I guess I'm just going to say, I agree with Alderman Mayer and more in particular Alderman Maladra back from the day. I think these examples of other businesses or traffic tickets or parking tickets, those don't get to the heart of the conflict of interest, which is where your entire financial life is dependent around your license. And that's, to me, where you really get into the heart of things. And so, it's hard to put yourself in those positions, but you have to imagine your family, you got a lot depending on things. And unless I'm mistaken, you cannot force somebody to recuse themselves, right? I mean, there's no legal way to do that. And so you hope that they do the right thing. You hope that they recuse themselves, but I think what we're talking about is that potential situation that might exist. And so for now, I think I'm just in favor of let's go back to the way it was. And let's just sort of move forward and see what happens. I don't know. To me, I agree this came up kind of quickly. I mean, obviously, I've known the history here, but I was absent last week, and then all of a sudden, there's a special committee of the whole. I don't know. I say let's go back to where we were and reevaluate. The way it was done over the last couple of times it was discussed just didn't settle well with me. I'll just leave it at that. And, if we want to do it as a whole, especially under a new council, I think that's the right thing to do. So tonight I'll be voting back to the basics, so to speak. And then, you know, if we want to bring up, I'm sure there'll be a time when we want to bring up a whole bunch of reviews on liquor license issues, and then I think we could deal with all comprehensively. But I don't think dealing with one little issue at a time is really the right way to do it.
Alderperson Swanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderperson Kozarog mentioned, and Mayor mentioned also that Maladra talked about the business being reliant on alcohol sales. And I just wanted to point out that there are many businesses in Geneva that have liquor licenses that are not 100% liquor businesses. And they're stores that may sell a bottle of wine and they have a liquor license, but that is not their major source of revenue. So I think the thoughts there, however noble, aren't really accurate. And I think in most cases, most businesses, selling alcohol is part of the business. It is not the major part of the business. And in fact, the way the ordinance is written, food is the major business, not alcohol sales. So it's already addressed in the ordinance as we have it written. So I just wanted to point that out to everyone, that this is not saying we have alcohol-related businesses that are going to be motivated for their families. They have a liquor license as part of their business, but I'm not sure that that's motivating them to try to game the system to get beneficial treatment. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Alderperson Malicki.
Quick question, how many strikes does a license holder get against them before they actually lose a license? Like how many?
It depends on, it
Depends
depends
on
on the severity of the
severity?
case,
Okay,
correct?
sure.
And of course, as you may or may not know, and this seems rather interesting, the fines we dispatch have to meet a certain smell test should it be appealed.
Okay,
So, well, the fine is one thing. The closure of the operations for selling liquor is a secondary punitive action. There has never been, as far as I know, a total revocation of a license, despite, if I may speak candidly, the desire for some to be revoked. They've, in fact, chose closure on their own volition.
okay,
So
thank you.
there's- yeah. Alderperson Mayor?
I'd like
Then Kilburn?
I think earlier in the day, when I was reading all this information, I had a similar reading. Thank you. Earlier, when I was reading the information provided, I had a similar idea that it was, it had to be related to a food establishment serving alcohol. That is not the ordinance that's been drafted here, correct? It doesn't reference primarily as food.
The language that is currently in the city code says a license may be granted to any member of the city council in relation to premises that are located within the territory subject to the jurisdiction of that official if, one, the sale of alcoholic liquor pursuant to the license is incidental to the selling of food. Two, the issuance of the license is approved by the state commission. Three, the issuance of the license is in accordance with all applicable local ordinances in effect where the premises are located. And four, the official granted a license does not vote on alcoholic liquor issues pending before the board or council to which the license holder is elected. So that's the current state statute language, incidental to the selling of food.
And then we're proposing no amendment, or an amendment to
The-
disallow.
This is an exception if you allow a council member to hold a liquor license. What the direction from the council was to consider not allowing that, which strikes all of that language. It removes all exceptions, it just says you cannot.
Okay. And in the current situation of the ordinance, how is the sale of alcohol incidental measured? How does that get established to a food establishment? Is there some
I
technical
mean,
way to
I think
define
it depends on
it?
the classification of license. As you can tell, there are different classifications, whether it's a restaurant license, whether it's a packaged liquor store. So a packaged liquor store would not
Would
be
not
incidental to
qualify
this.
under, okay, and
Correct.
then
Or a BYOB?
But a BYOB,
Is a license in the
yeah,
city of
so
Geneva.
that
yeah.
somebody that runs a restaurant
Yep.
that has a BYOB license would be prohibited from our ordinance.
Unless they
as it
change
stands.
the ownership of that license, correct. And/or, we have multiple studios in town, we have nail salons, et cetera, that have a BYOB as well. And/or have licenses as well to serve beer. We're gonna have ones being proposed for the Geneva Commons coming up. Hammer and Nails, they would like a liquor license as well to serve their clients while enjoying a nice manicure. If that individual calls Geneva home, chooses to run for council, he or she would, if it's redacted, or if it's revoked, have to either change the ownership of the license and/or ask the council, if successful, to amend the ordinance again so that he or she can serve.
Okay. I think that's less clear now for me, so I need to do a little checking back on that.
Alderperson Kilburg?
Just one comment. I know Alderman Kotzrog indicated that liquor licenses are so important to livelihood, and why put someone in that situation where they put their livelihood at risk? Well, if any one of us was driving at 2.0 or .2, and we got a DUI, and you lost your license, that would put someone's livelihood at risk as well. And I think that the police officer had a responsibility to pull that individual over because they're putting other drivers at risk. And the consequences are serious, and the police officer should take that seriously as well and treat that individual like any other individual in the city of Geneva. So I'm saying that there's a lot of circumstances where the law comes into play, and service on an elected board like we are, there's responsibilities associated with it. And again, I think what we're seeing is the worst in people, and I want to see the best in people. And I look around Geneva, and there are a lot of very capable people that could serve on this council and bring a lot to this body. People up and down 3rd Street, people that run businesses that just happen to have a liquor license. They're selling wine possibly. And again, it's a very small part of the business, but we disqualify them because we don't trust them, because there might be a violation and it put the city in a difficult or an awkward position. So I'm saying, I look at people and I see the best in people, not the worst or the greatest risk in people. And again, just because you have a liquor license doesn't mean that you're going to violate the law and put this council and this community in an awkward position. I just don't see that, and I think people that have a desire to run are not those sinister types that we have to keep an eye on, or they're going to be a problem in this community. We've got a lot of good business people, they have liquor licenses, and that doesn't make them irresponsible or really a risk. And since what we've had in place for several years hasn't been a big problem, I don't see why we have to make a major change at this late hour in our fiscal year for some reason that doesn't seem real clear to me.
Anyone else think the business owners are sinister? I certainly don't. From 1972 to 2016, the law was the opposite, and there was no issue either.
That's right.
So when we study the machinations of how this amendment took place, it does raise the specter of, to defer to Mr. Bruno, some of the politics. If we are, as a council, and this is the committee of the whole meeting only, if we are as a council choose to revoke that special language and go back to what the ordinance read, if an individual who holds a liquor license chooses to run, there's nothing precluding them from running. That's where we're getting, I think, mixed up too. Nothing at all. Nothing. And if he or she is successful, then the council has a decision to make. My hunch is that the council would support unanimously amending the liquor license code. Of course. I think it makes sense. The distrust comes in my humble opinion, based on very palpable experience that a liquor license holder, if he or she runs for office and is successful, doesn't trust the council to amend the code. And I think that's the furthest thing from the truth.
I have the floor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to make it clear, this is no impeachment of anyone, liquor holder or not.
Exactly.
I don't think there's anyone who besmirches any one of our citizens here. Thanks.
Anyone else? Ready for a vote? Alderperson Kilburg?
No, I just think what you're saying, Mayor, is that what we're doing is we're placing another hurdle for that individual, if in fact they have a liquor license, they run and they're elected, for them to overcome. And I think that becomes a barrier, a disqualifier, and in other words, they're being treated then differently, they're not equally to everyone else in this body. When they live here, they're a taxpayer, they run a business, and they just happen to have a liquor license, we're going to discriminate against them.
That's strong language, Alderperson Kilburg.
Okay, discrimination is probably a strong word,
It
but
is
I'm
a
just
strong
saying,
word.
there is an extra hurdle that they would have to cross.
That hurdle is but a jump over a puddle, with all due respect. Now, there's
Well-
also other hurdles in this community that no one's touched on yet.
Yeah.
If we can wave a little bit, you have to live in Geneva for a year to run for office. Should we eliminate that as well? You have to be 18 years old to run for council. Should we lower that? The state hasn't lowered it yet, so we can't, of course.
I don't think there's anyone suggesting that.
No, but if you assume that this is a hurdle, then everything else has to be a hurdle. And it's
Not
not
if-
just liquor license, it's not just liquor issues.
Not if it's being contested.
It's not just liquor issues.
Yeah.
If we have street closure discussions at this body, and Alderperson Jones says to Alderperson Smith, as someone who holds a liquor license, your street's gonna be closed, I would recommend you recuse yourself. Utility payments. If any one of us is in arrears on utility payments, we're not allowed to serve in office. Utility payments then expand to residential, business. What if, and we have this more often than you'd like to imagine, we receive letters from the state Internal Revenue Service regarding failure to pay employee taxes. If a license holder should be in that position, what's the council do? I do believe that the hurdle is not a hurdle. I believe it is integrity of the council, integrity of the community. Everyone trusts every business owner in this community. We know that. And should that person choose to run for office and he or she is successful, my God, there's a month before taking seat for the council to act. And I think the council would act unanimously. I can't imagine they wouldn't. But I just don't want, I find it uncomfortable that we're using language like discriminatory and all that. It's simply not. No, I know. No, I know. Well, you didn't retract it, but you stated that it was poorly chosen, but that's tough.
Isn't that retracting it?
No. Retracting is, I retract that. Yeah. But nevertheless, it becomes a little dicey. I know this is a interesting issue, yes,
Mayor,
sir.
I'll retract that statement.
You pointed out that there are other rules that apply to all of us, and I think that's not a good argument because you're saying, yes, we all have to be 18. We all have to live here for a year. We all have to do that. However, we all don't have liquor licenses.
Sure.
So it is restrictive in a certain sense. So what you're saying isn't quite true. They're not equal. And
Well,
I
I
also.
believe they are very much equal. I believe that, particularly with respect to Alderperson Mayor's commentary earlier, recusal is a self-governance issue.
Well,
And
it's in our ordinance, though. The one that Stephanie just read to us, it's part of the criteria, and they will not vote on liquor-related items. So it's saying they will be recusing themselves. It's
No, it
in-
does not. It says that they will not vote. They still
Okay.
have to announce a formal recusal.
Okay, fine,
Yeah.
but they're not going to be voting, and I think that's everyone's concern, is they're going to be voting and.
And not just on liquor issues, other issues that may be pertinent to or germane to a business. I think that's the larger concern. At least from 2016. That was the nature of the discussion at great length.
Well, I own a business
So?
in Geneva, and it does not have a liquor license,
Right.
but still, you can vote on electric rates and things that apply to, or building codes. Every
course.
year, the fire department comes out and inspects the business.
Right.
And says whether or not you have occupancy and are a fire hazard. Again, that's a different situation, but that does put them in a situation where they're having to go to an alderperson and say, I could shut down your business. So we're differentiating between liquor licenses and all other businesses, and I don't see why. I don't see why that one issue is such a controversial topic that we have to not allow them to be on the city council. And I'm not hearing any good explanations other than it's a liquor license. And we have business owners, I think the more business owners we have on the council, the better. They're the ones that have a lot more invested in the community, not only, well, I shouldn't say a lot more.
Yeah,
but
I'm waiting
they-
for you to clean that one up. Let's see.
But they have, their livelihood is invested, they've decided to have their business here, and it's important to them. So I don't see why we should say, we don't want you on our council, just because you have a liquor license. That's all. I wanted to clarify that. Yeah, everyone here cares about Geneva, I
No, I know,
realize
I know.
that. So, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for retracting too, that was important.
We have a motion, we have a second. Anything else? Ms. Venaria, please take the roll. This is to advance to the city council, ladies and
Can
gentlemen.
we,
Yes.
point of order, can we clarify the vote on aye?
If you
is-
vote aye, that is to revoke the language and recommend that revocation to the city council meeting. If you vote nay, that is to stay the language that currently exists.
Thank you.
Bruno?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Nay.
Kosarog?
Aye.
Malecki?
Nay.
Marks?
Nay.
Mayor?
Aye.
Patchke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Nay.
It's tied. I'll vote aye, so we advance this to the council for full discussion. We anticipate Alderperson Bowering and Alderperson Ruby to be joining us, and we'll continue this discussion. With that, we move on to item number two, item 2B, as in boy, is to consider draft ordinance amending Title I, Administrative, Chapter 6, Municipal Officers and Employees of the Geneva City Code. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Bruno makes the motion, Malachi makes the second. Ms. Dawkins, the floor is yours.
Okay, so the City of Geneva Personnel Policy Manual provides policies relating to employment and benefits if not otherwise covered under a collective bargaining agreement and is adopted by resolution of the City Council. In reviewing the Geneva City Code, there are several provisions that are in conflict with the Personnel Policy Manual. In 2009, it was recommended that any position that reports to a department head should be classified as a non-appointed official. While this change was made in the Personnel Policy Manual, the City of Geneva Code was not updated. For your consideration is an ordinance to amend the Geneva City Code to reflect the Personnel Policy Manual as it relates to appointed officials. In addition, it's further recommended that the term of appointed officials be changed from annual appointment to a term not to exceed the term of the mayor as is authorized by state statute. And I'm happy to address any questions.
Questions for City Administrator Dawkins? Alderperson Swanson.
I would like to request or move to bifurcate this into two separate issues. One appears to be house cleaning, and that's taking away the, not the appointments. And then the second one is the terms. I'd like to address them separately and vote on them separately.
Seconded.
Seconded by Kilberg. On the motion, we can discuss that motion, or excuse me, the amendment. The amendment is to bifurcate the matters with respect to length of service and,
Cleaning up the code.
the code cleanup.
Removing the titles of the people who are appointed.
The titles.
That's what I was calling
So
cleanup.
discussion regarding that amendment as offered by Swanson, seconded by Kilberg. Hearing none, let's take the vote. An aye vote is to support the motion, and nay vote is to deny the motion.
Bruno?
Nay.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kosarog?
Aye.
Malecki.
Nay.
Marks.
Aye.
Mayor.
Aye.
Patchke.
Nay.
Swanson.
Aye.
Motion carries. With that, is there a particular topic you'd like to discuss first? And I would assume that's the appointment issue?
Yeah.
Okay, the appointment issue, do you want to read that again, Steph? Excuse me?
So if, just to make sure I'm clear on which issue you want to address first, the appointment would be to change the appointive office from a one-year term to the term not to exceed the current term of the mayor.
That's the second.
Or is that your second?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
We'll do the appointment first.
Surprise me.
So we'll do that one first.
Okay,
This is the term?
this is the term of the appointment, correct. Questions from the dais? Yes, Mr. Alderperson Swanson.
I guess the first question is, where did this come from? Who asked for it, and why are we doing it?
Sure. So it's actually been kind of on the books to do for years, and it just hasn't been done. And the thought process is now that we're starting the new term of a mayor, it makes sense to do it now, also recognizing that we probably have several department heads that are getting close to retirement. And in order for recruitment purposes, it would make sense, rather than having to recruit for 1 year at a time, the term of the mayor as is allowed by statute.
When you say it's been on the books for a long time to do...
It's been on a cleanup list for,
Oh,
and we
okay.
just haven't run
Your
it.
cleanup list is
Multiple,
basically...
yeah. Code cleanup, yeah.
Okay. So it seems to me that we're losing city council consent approving these appointments on an annual basis by approving this. And it's a power that has been given to the city council to annually approve these appointments, and by taking that away and making it a 4-year term, that's taking some power away from the city council. And I guess I have an inherent problem with that. If we have an issue with the performance of any of those appointed officials, I think it's important that we can air that or voice our not disapproval by not voting to not approve them on an annual basis. So I would not support that. Thank you.
Alderperson Bruno.
Thank you. To that concern, there is nothing that, for poor performance, those individuals can be terminated at any time regardless.
So appointed officials can be terminated, but there is a procedure by statute that has to be followed. So they can only be removed from office by the mayor, not by the council. And then there is a hearing process for that. And there's notice requirements and the like.
And that through,
Unless they choose. Doesn't get changed.
Right, that remains the same.
Yeah.
yeah, so, and and we can air that to discuss probably in closed session.
Correct. If there's an
Three
issue
of us.
if there's an issue with performance and the council want to discuss it, you can go into closed session, talk about that particular employee.
Right.
And then if the mayor chooses to recommend termination, then there's a notice procedure and a hearing, and that applies regardless if it's a 1-year appointment or multiple. If on the,
And to clarify, that hearing process is at the request of the employee. If the employee chooses not to go through that hearing request, he or she can resign on their own volition.
Thank you, I'm fine with the change.
Alderperson Kilberg.
My thoughts, I've been, I guess I've been here since 2011, and when this exercise we go through in May, I believe, every year, I don't recall ever once any issues were raised or any employee, any salaried employee that was contested. Usually that vote takes around 20 seconds. And I think if I was an employee, I'd like to know every year that, hey, the council's supporting me, they're unanimous in their support. But if you have an issue and there's one that becomes a rumor, or if there's people that have concerns, you got a 4-year window then before you're going to hear the council ever speak to it again.
Untrue. If there is a significant concern, the process is that we would bring that to your attention. because-
Well, true, but
But the assumption that it's a 4-year,
What is
Pat,
it?
yes, that's not the case.
Well, I'm not stating
Nor is it
that.
a one-year pass.
Right, I
Right.
understand that,
Yeah.
but the thing is, though, when we gather in May and we have that vote, when it's presented to the council, it's been more of a formality than anything else, hasn't it?
I'd have to defer to you.
It has
It's
been.
not a formality for me,
Well,
because I meet with our directors
well,
at least
your
twice a year.
relationship is different than
Sure,
our
exactly,
relationship,
yeah.
right?
Right.
And I'm saying that what we do is we support our employees, and we let them know that every year when they come before us, or when it's brought before us, and we cast a vote. Isn't that correct?
That is correct, but what I hear you saying is that the perfunctory aye vote makes it better.
No, I didn't say that.
No, I know, I'm saying that's what I heard you say, is that the perfunctory
No,
vote is
don't-
more important.
Mayor, don't put words in my mouth.
Okay, that's more important than allowing someone to serve a four-year term unless they are deficient in their duties or some other.
That's a given.
Right. So the one-year appointment process is, or formality, I think, to use your terms. Is that correct?
Well, it serves the purpose though, Mayor, because it reinforces to the employee that they're welcome, they're appreciated, and that we look for them to serve for another year. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Did you hear that?
Go ahead, you want to repeat it, but
No, all I'm saying is that on an annual basis, the council gathers, and what we do is we reinforce the fact that these are welcomed, valued employees, then we do it on an annual basis, and they hear it comes from our own mouths.
I don't disagree with the sentiment. I don't understand why that formality has to be carried out annually, when in fact a four-year appointment consistent with the term of the mayor says the same thing. And prior to appointments, we meet with our department heads regularly as a council. We meet in our goals and objectives workshop, et cetera. I think all department heads and most city staff understand the value we place in them, our appreciation, our confidence. Absolutely. But I will say this, in terms of retention and recruitment, it is a different world. If we are hiring somebody in October for an appointed position, that individual, I think, in fact, I know, would pause because oftentimes those questions are asked. When is my appointment? Well, it's every year. So in other words, every year I have to, quote, be approved by the body, or I, quote, can't go on. In essence, that's what we're saying. And it's not a power issue. I think it's a recruitment and retention issue. I think it provides clarity to our professional staff. Some years are good, some years are more challenging, some years are smooth as silk. But to know that they have the confidence of the council over a four-year term, save for doing something that requires dismissal, which would never be taken lightly. It would be taken with advice and consent of all of you. And for what it's worth, it's only happened once in the last 25 years.
Mayor, I just have asked clarifications.
Sure.
And Stephanie maybe can answer this or you, but let's just say the city mayor leaves office because they got a job transfer. Does that mean that the council then has to reappoint those? That the mayor who takes that place, which would come out of the city council, actually, if I remember right, is that the end of that term, and does the new mayor start, or is it for the whole?
No, it would be for the same term that the mayor would have been elected.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Much like when we appoint city clerk or the city treasurer, when no one runs for that office.
Right, it
They're
goes-
appointed for the term of that mayor.
Then that's the clarification I wanted. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderperson Mayor?
I think that it's important to acknowledge that the labor market, the job market has changed in the past 10 years, and that replacing our critical leaders within the city is challenging, more challenging than it's been in the past, and that if we are hearing that this is a concern from applicants, that really, we do, it is a rubber stamping every year, is my experience, and I understand that having them appear and thank them and review their performance is something that could be considered as a positive for them. I think that it's probably not generally, and that people that work for our city would like to have an appointment that expresses the length of the term, that the mayor's term, because that is who appointed them originally. I don't think that it's some honorary process that people feel thanked by being reappointed each year. It is something we do every year, and not critically important.
Alderperson Cosarog?
I do support this. I want to acknowledge, though, it is hard to give up these things, these sort of powers in the council. I have a hard time with that, too. Coincidentally, I had a hard time with that, like when we put the liquor licenses to a more admin thing. I think I said at the time, just because I like to know the businesses coming to town, and I like to know who's applying. And it's not that I want to evaluate them. That's the liquor commissioner or the mayor or anybody else. It's just, it's news, and it's good for people to get up. But in this case, I think the council's worked really hard to get Geneva to be a more attractive place to work. We've increased our wage category, or whatever you say, 70% of the market. We worked on improving on benefits for all our employees, and I think this just falls right into line with that, where it is just another good reason to go work for the city of Geneva if you're more comfortable with the appointment you're getting. I don't see any drawback if employees can still be, and obviously they would be for any good cause, be able to be reviewed and discussed in closed session, or possibly even terminated. This doesn't seem to preclude that in any way whatsoever. And so I think it's just part of making Geneva, again, a better place to work. And so I fully support it for that reason.
Anyone else? Alderperson Swanson for a second time, unless someone who has not yet spoken wishes to do so for a first time. Alderperson Swanson.
Thank you. I guess on the recruitment side, I think, to me, the answer there is look at our history. And in my 8-year term, we haven't replaced one direct report. They've been appointed regularly because they're all doing a good job. So I think our history should be conveyed to applicants that it's possible, and should be. The other thing I wanted to point out is many times for issues like this, we go through an exercise where we look at what all of our neighbors are doing, and we didn't do that here. I'm pretty sure Batavia appoints on a one-year basis. St. Charles appoints on a one-year basis, so we chose not to show what our neighbors do. Just a point of reference, so we are an outlier here. I see no reason to make this change.
And just for a point of clarification, the St. Charles, if you're looking at, I was looking it up, so St. Charles, the staff is appointed upon recommendation of the city administrator, who has a contract for employment, is not a regular appointment. They're under contract, and same with Batavia. She has a contract for appointment, and they're made for 1 year or until a successor is appointed.
Thank you. So.
Anyone else? We have a motion, Ms. Fenari, by,
Not for this, we need one.
oh, we need a motion? No,
It's bifurcated,
so Right. this
is for
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
so we
right.
could-
This is the amended one, Swanson and Kilburg. No, this is.
no, this is a separate
This is
topic,
the
so
Swanson
is there a
and
motion to put
Kilburg.
this on the floor? I should have done that first, forgive me. Cosarog makes the motion, Mayor makes the second. Any additional discussion before a vote on this single item?
Well, yeah, so there was a motion to put on the floor, then there was a motion to bifurcate.
To amend it, correct.
And the bifurcation passed.
Correct, so we're
So
voting on this
now-
one issue
so
regarding
now is it the-
appointment.
Is it go back to the first motioner?
No, it's the motion on, it's Swanson and Kilberg's motion to separate it, so it's just the one issue that's being voted on.
Correct,
Right,
the appointment,
correct.
terms of the appointment. Ms. Bernardi, please take the vote.
Bruno?
Aye.
Gilbert? Kosarog?
Aye.
Malecki?
Just clarify, a vote in favor is to,
Concurrent with the
Concurrent.
term of the mayor's term for all appointed officials.
correct, aye.
Marks?
Nay.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Nay.
5-3, that passes. On the second topic, again, that's advanced to the council for continuous discussion.
And then the second part was to remove those positions that are listed in the code that have not been appointed, at least, some as early as 2009 and some as recent as 2012. But there are certain positions within the code, because they report to a department head who is appointed, the recommendation back in 2009 was to remove those from appointed positions.
Is there a motion on the floor as we discuss?
So moved.
Kosarog? Second. Seconded by Marks. Floor is open. We have a motion, we have a second. Ms. Bernari, take the vote.
Bruno?
Aye.
Gilbert? Aye. Kosarog?
Aye.
Malecki?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
8 in favor, 0 against, 2 absent. That's advanced to the council for continuous discussion as well. Public comment. Yeah, little separate. Yep. Yeah. Public comment, anyone? New business from the dais? Motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Marks makes the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Special Committee of the Whole meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Adjourned.